I need you to hate so I can use you for your energy.
This is real sales talk. Real sales advice from real sales practitioners. Giving you tips on how to dominate your sales quota are your co-hosts, Sean Mitchell and Phil Keene. This episode is brought to you by Convertist. We are incredibly excited to have partnered together with Convertist, which helps SaaS and services run managed outbound campaigns for teams looking to drive new pipeline opportunities. For teams targeting mid-size and enterprise deals, Convertist integrates with CRMs like Salesforce to uncover actionable data in their sales processes, which enables them to find areas of improvement and double down on strategies that actually work. Benchmark the lead generation performance expected of a seasoned SDR and identify actionable areas of improvement in a sales process, all out of one place with Convertist. For teams looking to measure and enhance their performance of their sales funnel and architect a better revenue engine, cast an application to join the Convertist Slack group. It's at convertist.com/Slack. That's Convertist, convertist.com/Slack, S-L-A-C-K. What's going on, everyone? It's Sean Mitchell and Phil Keene here, Real Sales Talk. We are going live with Season 8. It's so crazy. Season 8 means that we are like into the 80s for episodes. So, Phil, we need to do something special for when we hit 100 episodes. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, give up, right? Or stop.
No way. we
No,
need to do a live episode where either you or I fly to somewhere and we just rock live.
Do it live. I think our buddy Scott Ingram and I were chatting on the phone today, and I think we have an idea. Sean, I haven't told you about it yet.
Okay, I'm nervous.
That'll be fun.
So this is an extra special season for Real Sales Talk. The reason why is because this is the first season that we are introducing a sponsor into the mix. And we've actually got the founder and CEO of the sponsor, Convertist, on to talk about the value that that they're providing. But not only that, but really kind of a higher level topic of sales, SDRs, and how the process of follow-up is actually changing and evolving, and why that's important for all of our listeners to know. So, Phil, why don't you kind of take it over and run with this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, thank you for coming back on the show. This is the second time. One of your episodes was actually one of our top performing episodes. We're happy to have you back on.
Nice.
All of our people have definitely been happy about you being on. So we're happy to have you back.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So that's great. And then thank you for sponsoring. So that's a great thing. You and your company have been great to the Real Sales Talk family.
Thanks for running a great show. I think there's
we definitely appreciate it. So real quick, I just want to give everybody a heads up of why Sean and I have been really hesitant to take sponsorships, and Chris joined Sean and I in a brief dialogue. Actually, it was a pretty extensive dialogue over a few hours and a few days about just what a sponsorship would look like and what we would do with it and how we set things up. So like you guys have heard on the last episode of Tech Talk, where Sean and I talked about, hey, we got new microphones. I think you guys noticed the lighting system's better if you're on the YouTube. If not, go subscribe, check it out. It's definitely a big part of Chris and the company's generosity to help sponsor and believing in the cause of what we do with Real Sales Talk. And it's super exciting. And Chris, we can't thank you enough. Chris, give us a pitch. Tell us about Convertist. We believe in what you're doing, but you explain it way better than Sean and I do. So.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Essentially, where we started off was more on the top of funnel lead generation, pipeline creation side. And that's still most of what we specialize in, is doing managed outbound lead generation, sales development for early, mid-size, and enterprises increasingly. And what we're also doing is just moving towards measuring and reporting the entire revenue funnel. So tying back ROI to all of the in-house sales reps. If you don't have in-house sales reps, outsource them to us. So, on the SDR side, filling the funnel, and again, just figuring out the way to work backwards from your desired ideal customer profile, build a list, curate fresh leads, and devise compelling messaging, phraseology, scripting, and copy to target these leads. That's our wheelhouse. We've done it for hundreds of customers at this point, and really, we have a lot we can bring to the table in the way of knowing what resonates with different prospects, as it's wildly different prospect to prospect.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that as you and I and Sean sat down and had a conversation about what your company did, because we vetted you pretty hard before we actually brought you on as a sponsor, it was really interesting to hear how you think about the process, because you're full service, but at the same time, like, you really build a custom plan based off what they need, and you're bringing a really unique thing to the market. So if you guys have not had a chance to check it out, what website, where can we find you? What can we find out about Convertist? And you guys have not heard it, it's probably on the pre-roll and mid-roll at least once.
Sure. So convertist.com. We do run a Slack group for CROs, VPSs, VPMs, and AEs, senior AEs. It's over at convertist.com/Slack as well. So I'd love to have more in the community as well, and learning how to architect the best revenue funnel together.
It's awesome. So let's jump into it. You're crazy smart. I want to make this time valuable for our guest and for all of our listeners.
Sure.
So before this, we had a brief conversation. We started geeking out, and then we decided, hey, it was probably time to hit record and start from scratch. So we started talking about just kind of change management, putting process in place, what should happen for an SDR, what should happen as an AE, what things are being done today that are just like everybody else, the simple things of like what your CTA looks like in your email and why you're not getting responses, or when you send a proposal, why it's just like everybody else's, and things that are happening in the sales process have just become what a lot of people are saying is could be just replaced by AI and robotic. Like, how do you not be that person, and how do you actually differentiate yourself a little bit? So we got in that conversation. Then we started talking SDR AE handoff. So there's a lot of topic there. So let's start SDRs. I think there's a lot there. So anybody that's in the sales development, outbound, or anybody that's prospecting, give me your quick spiel, and then let's just wrap.
Yeah. So on the prospecting side, maybe, how has it changed? And maybe since the last time I was on the show about a year ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely. So it's definitely, the landscape's changing. I do recall having said that on the last appearance, but it has more so than ever, in the fact that I'd say about a year ago, if you had like a good, relevant kind of personalization, or just you established relevance in the email with a few concise sentences that were mostly a pitch, and then a call to action along the lines of, how's your schedule this or next week for a 10 or 15-minute call? Let me know and I'll send an invitation so you have it in your schedule. Well, no shit, you want the invitation so you have it in your schedule. Anyways, the idea there is that the personalization / relevant angle, like that part rather, that hasn't changed too much. You still need to establish relevance, and there's a hierarchy of these. At the top would be having a connection internally within the organization. Obviously, that's harder to find unless it's there, unless you actually have it from a second or third degree connection brokering it. But it requires a lot more nuance and attention to detail in how you approach someone and you open that personalization. I'd say a few years ago, it didn't need a personalization. All you needed to say was something along the lines of, I'm Chris from company XYZ. We specialize in fill in the blank. Do you have 10, 15 minutes? Let's talk. Cool. 10% response rate. That actually filled appointments, the colleges with appointments. And that was pretty fascinating that it happened. Times were good. They're still good. You just need to try a lot harder. And it's work that you can't bullshit, to put it kindly or bluntly. What I mean by that is that individually, if it's not transactional sales, if we're working with mid-sized enterprise ACVs, we're talking to operators who are getting these emails all the time. And they know that relevance personalization can be pseudo automated, and they know that we're working with battle cards in the way of what our pitch is, and it's targeted towards them because we have 3 to 5 customer segments, and the template, the body of the content of the email is targeted towards them. But that actually has to change a lot in the way of we specialize in X, Y, and Z things. The narrative has changed a lot so that we're sending campaigns on behalf of our partners that are pure value add campaigns that don't really include those thinly veiled pitches in the way of we specialize in X, Y, and Z. It's more along the lines of having worked with companies like fill in the blank, company X, company Y. We've noticed that they encountered pains along the lines of, right? So this is like a minimum viable campaign these days, is a story of not do you encounter X, Y, and Z things on a day-to-day basis. It's more along the lines of, hey, other customers or other partners of ours who match your profile encountered these pain points. I'm just curious, do any of these resonate, right? That's the call to action. And this is one flavor, right, of a campaign, and we can go into what others might look like. But I'd say that's like the minimum viable campaign these days, is explaining that you are aligned with their universe of problems, that you give a shit about what's facing them on the day-to-day, and that you're looking to make it better. You're looking to make a top 3 or top 5 pain and resolve it effectively. And you need to do it in a way that looks genuine and authentic and probably not automated these days.
Yeah.
It would seem like that would take, man, this is amazing. I'm just looking at myself in the video, and I'm just beaming with these new lights. It's amazing.
Nice.
So rabbit trail there. So it would seem like for a company that's just getting off the ground, or maybe they're a company with some resources, doing the research to know what those profiles are would take time and money and effort and people to gather together. So
Sure.
My guess is you probably know a lot of those things well in many verticals, and can help reduce that time that it takes to say, this is what we see for these customers or for similar customers or for your competitors. So talk a little bit about that and why the speed and the scale of that is so much easier for you because you're doing it for so many companies.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Funny story. I don't think I mentioned this the last time, but the way I got into the space, a lifetime ago, helped a couple of venture-backed companies with the revenue side at the A, B, C stages. But the way I actually started this company was I emailed the heads of, say, biz dev and sales development at company after company. And really, I just came at them from the approach of, hey, I noticed, as an example for one person, you're looking at ramping up, dialing up your sales development in-house. Happy to help. We've got a few assessments over here that have helped us find great reps. It's my way to pay it forward for the valuable content over the years. Pep over at Conversion Excel, who runs CRO, conversion rate optimization, was actually a first customer. I got him with a Gmail address and no website. And the way I did that was by offering this value up front of just, hey, this isn't a template. Pep, personally, you've offered up a lot of value to me over the years. He runs an awesome blog. And essentially, I just got in touch saying, hey, happy to help in terms of vetting this rep. By the way, I'm working on something. It's a little bit of an experiment, right? That was that vulnerability card, like that early stage startup founder. Like, if one do another, help evangelize something I'm building. And with that, I just said, if you're interested in benchmarking any of your in-house representatives as you bring them on board, we're happy to have a chat. And without even being asked, I shared that assessment, right, to find a good sales development rep and try to screen out some of his talent as he was looking at it. And that started a conversation, and in less than a week, we got started on a non-trivial engagement, running lead generation for them. And that's that's how I got into this space, and that's how I recommend, because we do run discovery, at Convertist. We do run discovery for a lot of these early stage founders in helping them find their niches, helping them find out where might it be worth commercializing with a real product. Some of these are even smokescreen campaigns where we're basically saying, hey, on the ground floor of something, a new product that is intended to resolve problem X. I'd like to make sure I'm building the right thing and focusing on the right, improving the right aspects or parts of your flow day to day. Do you think it might make sense? I want to hear if what I'm working on might make sense. And these are kind of like customer discovery calls or customer discovery emails. I think there's a book, Lean Customer Development. It's one of the sequels to Lean Startup. I don't care for that book much, but its sequels are pretty good. And one of its sequels goes over like the type of messaging, and it's a lot softer. You're not coming at them with like, we anticipate generating ROI between 200% and 300% and payback within the first 2 weeks, and things along those lines that look like you're beating your chest a little too much and seeming hyper pitchy, especially in these early stage customer developments type of emails and approaches. It's a great idea to emphasize the vulnerable aspect of, I'm remembering the Parker inbox, the email that Parker from Zenefits, I think that was what it was called, the Parker inbox, from Zenefits. It was just a mass carpet bomb campaign back when those worked, with zero personalization, except actually said a friend in tech mentioned was the personalization for this, if you are familiar with it. But there was that vulnerability instilled in that email too, where it said, we do something boring but admittedly important. I like that. I like the ring of it. It's, you kind of put yourself on their level. A lot of this is an exercise of trying to do that, not looking like the hyper pitchy salesperson who just intends to run everyone over and hard sell everyone on a phone call. An email like that sets the pace that you're trying to learn. You want to really improve this person's life as part of their workflow and make their job or their day-to-day a little easier. And you want an honest conversation about it. And I think emails that speak to this effect get a lot more replies and generate a lot more leads or interest or phone calls, conversations than the emails sent from 2011. Send me the right direction, or we specialize in X. How's 10, 15 minutes for a call?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm kind of picking up on, three themes: personalization, vulnerability, and just honesty about what your intent is or what you're trying to get out of it. I hear a lot, and I see a lot on LinkedIn, a lot of sales leaders lamenting about the same email being sent by 50 different salespeople trying to reach out to them. So what does that look like? We talked about before we hit record about how things have changed.
Sure.
I know that anything done over and over and over again, like any strategy that becomes common, then becomes ineffective because it is common, and it's a unique approach that really makes a difference. So talk a little bit about how that process has evolved and changed and how it continues to evolve.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's analogous to the gold rush or stocks and trading before it was automated and run by algorithms, which it primarily is these days. It's inefficiencies in the market in the way of how most people are handling something. Someone comes along and notices, ooh, there's an opportunity here. And the difference between back then and now is when someone notices this, they make content out of it, broadcast it, and before you know it, you have an open source playbook about something. I live in the world of reading all of these playbooks and making sure that I'm trying to still think about the one step up from them, so that I can still have that leg up over the other sales reps that just read it and follow it verbatim as a playbook. I think where we've come is so we've come to a place where you can't carry yourself in the same way that everyone else is, even if it is a unique, novel, value-add thing. Like, that's the tragedy of it all, is when you message someone saying, hey, as for a CEO agency, as an example, hey, I noticed, you might have some opportunities for your keyword or your meta tag. Yeah, the keywords in your meta tag, as an example. Or I noticed this, you can change up the CSS, the code on your website, and make it look a little bit better. Here's the source code. Here's what I have in mind. And you just offer that up to them. It seems like everyone's doing that in the space now. So that kind of thing isn't resonating, even though it is genuine value add. So it's not just coming to the table with interest, awareness, and authenticity, but it's knowing what everyone else is doing, trying to approximate that too. And being mindful of it, being aware of what that status quo is in the way of what the entire, what all the other SDRs or even the AEs in your space are doing. With mindfulness and awareness of that, looking at swinging the pendulum in the other way while still bringing tremendous amounts of value to the table, swinging the pendulum in the other way so that you don't look like what everyone else is doing, so that your emails don't get archived or deleted for looking like a rep who's following a playbook or a template or canned generic, type of process or operation that was devised by someone up on high.
Yeah, so you actually point out some interesting themes, and we'll start hearing it over the last few shows that we've had, and even into the few shows of season 8 as we get into it. Is people buy from where they trust, and some of the things you're talking about, I'm giving you value, but I'm also just coming from a very honest place. I'm being conversational about what we're talking about. So things like, hey, we're early and I'm just really exploring, trying to figure out if this makes sense for us, is a really honest thing. And there's really only a certain shelf life. And that doesn't work for a Series A or a Series B or a Series C. It's just not where their world is. Where it's something, maybe it's, hey, we're testing out a segment. Maybe that's what hey, we're testing out your industry as a segment. And we don't really know if it works in your industry, but we feel that these 3 things should resonate with your industry, and that's why I'm emailing you. And it shows the humility of, I don't know what the answer is. You're the expert. I want you to come walk me through this and make sure I'm thinking the right way. And it's an interesting conversational thing to have in. And I've actually have a series of emails that I've set up to where I don't even have a CTA. It's just a question to create dialogue and get them to respond. And when they respond, it's, hey, you responded. So something I said resonated. I know that because you actually responded back to me. And then it's, hey, great. So tell me more about why that happened. So there's 2 email chains, and then it's say, all right, let's actually sit down and have a full dialogue about this. So the idea from email is, I want you to trust that what I'm asking you is going to be relevant and that I know what the hell I'm talking about. Or when we have a conversation, it's going to add value to you. So there's a lot of what you're saying, and I want to make sure we pull that back in as, one, you're adding value, and one, you're giving you're showing humility, and that's how you're getting people to trust you. Yeah.
And I'd say mindfulness and awareness, not just of the landscape at large, but also just knowing what speaks to the value of my solution, right? What I can bring to the table with this offering and the options we have in a way that isn't strutting our stuff too much, right? It's risky for some profiles, even if you can generate three digits in ROI for them, to actually mention that in the first touch point of an email, even if you allude to having done it for a partner, right? With other partners, we've been able to accomplish X, Y, and Z things for them. It's a story. The psychology behind doing that is actually pretty fascinating, by the way. We're seeing this transition from saying, do you personally encounter X, to in working with other partners facing X, we've helped them resolving it. We've helped them resolving it by doing Y, right? So the story approach definitely helps, but also being mindful that it's not always going to work. You might have to go beyond that story approach. Now, I think that there are always people who will reply to this vulnerable angle, right? This, founder to founder, operator to operator. Would love to know that I'm working on the highest priority thing, the most impactful, effective thing to help you build your business. So keeping that in mind and knowing that, you know, it's not going to work on everyone. You will need your touch points, these email touch points, to emphasize different things as well, so that, you know, you hit them at the right window, but it's also the right messaging. And each one of these touch points needs to have substantial value in them, and they need to be coming from a different angle. But I'd say that, you know, from the discovery, from the early stage side, that's definitely the right way to do it. The mindfulness and awareness of carrying yourself in a genuine way without letting anything get to your head too much and being hyper pitchy, beating your chest too much, that never changes. But I'd say that as you work up market, right, as an early stage, you start, you know, working primarily with more early stage, mid-sized businesses than you work enterprise. As you do work up market, it's not going to work as much. That vulnerable angle of, you know, you're talking with operators who get those emails every day, probably other emails that look like that. You have to go one step beyond it and think about, you know, substantially different emails that you send them that they're not getting from anyone else. Yeah, I think there's actually a stage, and as you get into, call it post 1 million or Series A type range, is where we have 5 SDRs, 6 SDRs, and the shucks, where the new kid on the block thing just stops working. To where you almost have to do the opposite, which is we're established and we've done this when we have 500 customers or 1,000 customers or 100 customers, whatever your number is. That now your tone changes, but you still have to find a way to actually build some kind of trust between that email enough where they'll respond and enough to make them think and actually create dialogue with you. So it's you got to time it properly to really make that work.
One of the things I'm curious about, Chris, because I can see that this would be a challenge for anyone who's doing SDRs or any sort of outbound outreach on a regular basis, is that they sit down in the seat and they probably spend very little time thinking about, okay, I'm starting to see that this email or this phrasing or pitch is becoming more common. I'm seeing, you know, sales leaders on LinkedIn complain about it and post screenshots of the verbiage, and oh my gosh, that's the exact same thing that I sent the other day, or, you know, earlier today. So my question is, how do you how often are you changing that verbiage when you find out that something is being overused and therefore becoming ineffective? Sure. So I would say that, you know, obviously if lead generation, you know, reduces to half of what it was, you know, from one quarter to the next, that probably indicates that you should change something up. But I'd argue that you should always be testing, at least on a micro level, 5% of the time, even if you have a stellar campaign and it's converting like crazy, just on the, you know, 5% of the time with your audience, you know, tier it out and try something new there, either in the way of an altogether new channel, altogether different message, maybe a different audience, if you're interested in moving cross vertical. But, you know, the process that we have when I'm trying to help someone or a team devise substantially better messaging, you know, and you're right, everyone is complaining on all of these different boards on LinkedIn as an example, about, you know, the generic spammy templated campaigns that look like what they are, you know, scripted and just deployed automatically. There's no right answers, and you know, that's a good thing and a bad thing. So the good thing, it's going to be harder for other people to try to figure it out on their own if they're not being as methodical about it. You know, the tough thing is that it's harder to actually pull this off without having a real substantial value baked into your messages. And really what this involves is just an elaborate whiteboarding session where you're just, and by that I mean elongated whiteboarding session. You're never not whiteboarding and thinking about the unique touch points of the value that you can add and bring to the conversation, not just to line up the lead, but
when someone goes to you, right? You're following up on the proposal and they haven't gotten back, and you're saying bubbling up, circling up. I'm looking to close the loop, or whatever people, just the generic ways to try to establish relevance and following up, right? None of our reps, you'll never see a rep from Convertist sending an email that includes something like that baked into the message, because when I get those emails, I think the rep is super lazy. And that's more on the AE side, right? That's not even SDRs. But the point is, it takes a whiteboarding session where you're asking yourself, first of all, like, what does this team need to really improve their flow? And what can we offer them for free? What can we essentially offer them to help out with it in a way that implicitly speaks to what our product can do for them? As an example, for over the last year, we've helped a competitor research company out there do competitor research and line up pipeline for that. So in a nutshell, their campaign might look like asking heads of product marketing, heads of marketing, CMOs, hey, I'd love to take some legwork off your plate and help out with looking up, spinning up a report in the way of the activity that your top 2 or 3 competitors are doing. I took a stab at who your top 3 competitors are. Here they are, bulleted. Do these look right? Or, let me know if I need to make any revisions. And they're smart people. These people receiving these emails on the other end, they know what they're in for, right? They know that you've got an axe to grind, and it involves money, right? You're trying to sell something at the end of the day, but they value that you went that extra mile to think about, this person gets 50 plus emails every day containing, the 10-minute CTA. Let's hop on a call, and then, it's just in 3 to 5 glib cursory sentences, a pitch, right? They're going to value that you went the extra mile to think of something that could genuinely improve their lives, whether or not you work together, whether or not you actually end up doing business together. That's just an example of something that might help. My buddy Oleg runs Outsourcely, and as an example for their campaigns, and I know this because I listed, we hire remote reps increasingly out of the Bay Area, but we still hire remotely out of the States too. And Oleg actually outbounded me without even knowing it. He actually went ahead and found that I had a job post out there on a remote job board, and then listed it on his marketplace, Outsourcely, which is to help find people to, right? It's basically a talent pool. It's a marketplace for talent. And on Outsourcely, as an example, Oleg found the what I listed online, and he put it on his marketplace and had people apply to it. He ended up having something to the tune of 78 candidates applied to this job. And what he ended up doing as part of his campaign to me was, hey, Chris, notice you put this on a remote job board somewhere. I went ahead and put this on our job board too. We have 78 candidates who are ready to hear from you. And then a link to my 30-day trial of Outsourcely, as an example. So, these are things that wouldn't make sense if any other company did them, right? Like if Convertist told you, hey, I see you're hiring, a product manager. I went ahead and used Convertist to find 78 candidates for product management. It wouldn't make sense, right? It needs to be contextual. It needs to actually fit and be aligned and overlap with the main thing that you do, the main offering that you're providing partners. So, that's really how you have to think about it. There are things out there. You can start with a blog. You can start with a webinar, a case study, but you got to take that somewhere else if you really want to move the needle and be substantially different.
Yeah, and I think even what John Barrows was talking about is it's not just send me a blog. It's send me, hey, paragraph 3, there's actually really relevant things that you should talk about, and I think it resonates with you.
Exactly.
Want to discuss it if you have time. And I think there's something where that works. Let's actually unpack this a little bit further. So I always find it funny when I see a VP of sales posting something online of like, I got this email from this SDR. Holy shit, it's a horrible email. Can I tell you why I want to blast them on the entire internet?
Yeah.
If anybody in the Real Sales Talk family is doing that, you're not a part of the Real Sales Talk family. You're out. Don't blast people on the internet. Like, go take it to them maybe directly and have that conversation, but don't throw people under the bus. It's just not cool. Now create some dialogue around what should be the right things and how to do it. That's great, right? let's do that. Let's have those conversations.
Right.
But what I find is most problems, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, is there's a lot of times the VP level management is just so disconnected from what's happening on the front line that they still live in the world that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 40 years ago, I did it this way, and I'm a crotchety old man now, and maybe some of them you guys aren't, is I'm a rock star. I killed it at my role. All I did was pick the phone up 85 times a day, and guess what? I set meetings. Awesome. Hey, I sent this same email 49 times, and I always got 3 responses. Guess what? That was 16 years ago, and everybody looked at email. So I think there's all of that stuff kind of starts to come backwards, and they're so far disconnected from what actually happens on the front line now, and they don't invest the time. And some of the interviews you've done over the last 3 or 4 years, 3 or 4 seasons, excuse me, that are the best interviews are the frontline manager. Like, I sit at the desk and I make calls with my team. I sit at the desk and I help write email, and I see the response and what's going to happen. And a really good episode was Josh Schwartz, and talks about it, getting his hands dirty and getting deep inside that process. There's a lot to that. Where, curious to hear your thoughts. So I'm ranting a little bit, but disconnection from a manager level to the front line, and why do you think that's happening? Real Sales Talk family, want to take a quick break just to say thank you to our partner Convertist. If you're interested in improving your game to drive leads, opportunities, or closes, join the Convertist Slack group, a place where sales and marketing operators can talk best practices to architect a revenue engine. Cast an application at convertist.com/Slack. That's convertist.com/Slack. Now let's get back to the episode.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I think a lot of those people are on their way out. The traditional hit the phones, pound the pavement, use the exact same script no matter who you're targeting, and results will happen. I think that yeah, there's a lot to be said for having these people not be far removed from frontline sales. Obviously, by the nature of their work, they're going to be involved in architecting, coordinating, and managing it. But I still think that they should be involved in observing, at the very least shadowing, and spending a lot of their time doing it, shadowing these campaigns so they could see, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why, the templates that I used to send, I wonder why those aren't working. As an example. But I think that, as an example, I'll make calls, I'll make emails along with my representatives regularly so they can hear from me what I have to do to book these meetings. And what that means is that I also have to know what I need to do to book these meetings. So I think that's doing your own prospect. So I'm still doing my own prospecting sometimes. I dialed it back. We have full-fledged SDRs over here drumming up pipeline, but I still do it myself. And the reason why is I don't want to get far removed or disconnected from that exercise of what it takes to actually book these meetings, because it's that game of cat and mouse, or cops and robbers, of everyone looking at what everyone else is doing, copying what's working, cloning it. Tomorrow it doesn't work, and then you have to start from scratch. So the way around that is by actually doing the work yourself. And sometimes, your title will carry you and still book the meeting anyways, if you run the company, but it still keeps you on your game, right? If you're following up for the 13th time after sending an agreement, it doesn't matter at that point who you are. You probably need a really compelling piece of value to bring to the table at that stage. But yeah, so this is to say that bringing value to the table and emphasizing what you can do for them from these different angles doesn't change. Even after you book that initial meeting and have the qualifying call, it only gets more important that you bring good substantial value to the table.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's actually, and Sean, I think you have a question, but as you go into, I've had some VPs of sales that I've sat next to at events, and they're like, this guy's crazy smart. And then like a month later, I'll run into him like, hey, remember I told you that guy was crazy smart? Like, I had one of his SDRs reach out to me, and it was awful, and I'm actually really upset about it. And it's so ridiculous to think of how far disconnected they are and how little they can actually affect change inside their organization. And I'm just curious why that happens and where that goes. But I think there's so much psychology behind it that it might even be another conversation.
I think just yesterday I emailed. I don't expect this to actually convert and materialize into a meeting or anything, but I was legitimately looking at an offering and spending a non-trivial amount of money on it. And eventually their AE just started reaching out with the same, hope you had a great weekend. It shows up in purple because I'm in Gmail. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I know that it's probably a text expansion tool like aText or Phrase Express or something. And then it leads into wanted to see if you had any questions. I can, just the link again to the proposal is here. Let me know. I was so mad getting that. I was so mad. By the way, I get more mad than anyone else at these. I don't broadcast them on LinkedIn. I don't shame anyone, but I do get mad when I get an email with the subject line "Your thoughts?" ? Or when I get someone like an AE following up lazily after I really expressed interest in buying something. I just got busy and didn't, immediately buy. And then you think you can close me with, hey, hope you had a great weekend. Wanted to see if you had any questions or if you looked at the proposal. Again, the link is here. Let me know. Come on,
yeah,
that could just be part of a drip campaign for all I know. Don't let me think this. Don't make me think you give a shit. You are an ambassador for your company as an SDR. You're an ambassador of your company as an AE. I don't care how far removed you are from an excellent VP of sales, but you make your company look like shit, like absolute shit when you do that stuff, and I will judge you for it. Sorry, I'm getting heated up here, but you get the point. It's very visceral and it's very real. And my point is that if you're closing deals with messaging like that, if it's converting at all, you can substantially increase your sales by just thinking a little bit more, doing what Abe Lincoln said. And if you have 5 hours to cut down a tree, you spend 4 hours sharpening the axe. That's spending 4 hours thinking about what underlying value you can bring to the table to inform these campaigns, right? From one touch point to the other, they need to be different enough. You can't just repeat the same thing and when massage and do window dressing on let me know and I'll send an invitation, and then change that to if that sounds good, I'll send an invitation over so it's in your schedule or something like that. You can't just massage bullshit and expect it to convert. You need to spend the 4 hours sharpening the axe and conceptualizing the value to bring to the table.
So two themes I'm getting from this point up until now. One is take the time to personalize. Second is test. And if it's not working, kill it and do something new. So I think those are two really good takeaways for our listeners up until this point. You really have to do those two things. Be original. Don't send something that's out of the box. Give it some thought. Add some personalization into it. And make sure it's working, most importantly. If it's not working, then stop doing it. Stop using that same phrasing or that same email template. So what I'd like to do now, Chris, is get real tactical. I want to know tools, techniques, all of those things so that we can get real specific. I think that's one of the things that this podcast is really good at. It's all right. So we've talked high level. We get that personalization and testing is important, but let's get real granular, Chris. How can someone start doing this on their own? Where do they start? What do they do?
Yeah, I'd say that I want to first say that I'm thinking of it as global maximas on a graph. Like little bumps, and some of them convert more than others. The global maxima that will convert the most leads possible, you won't find on any blog post anywhere. You won't find the way to speak to your own unique solution in your space in a way that no other rep is doing on a HubSpot blog post. That doesn't exist.
Why is that?
So first and foremost, I don't think HubSpot's sending those messages to begin with, but I'd say that if someone really finds out that thing that moves the needle, and broadcasts it, they know it'll be swooped up, right? And taken, everyone will read it, they'll clone it, they'll repurpose it for their businesses. And before you know it, because we're all selling into the same pool of mid-sized enterprise companies, they're all getting that same fucking message, right? So that's the underlying idea there, is that.
And here that email is on LinkedIn, just getting blasted.
Yeah, right. It's actually hilarious. One of my favorite things, I had a subject line, which was "time to connect?" and I said it on stage twice. And then I put it in a blog post that got blasted out. And I get emails now, and it's my favorite when I get the email with that subject line. I'm like, my bad, sorry.
Right. Yeah, you don't know what you did there, but you made it happen. Yeah.
If I get one more email telling me they're getting chased by a polar bear, it's going to be over.
Whoever said, what is it? What's that proverb of the saying? Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. That was not a salesperson or a sales practitioner who said that. That was not someone who was trying to hit quota. I'd say, yeah. So we're all learning from each other, but really, I'd say that the strategies to think about I'll call it a value add content arsenal. I think that that's what it takes to build to generate appointments these days. It's, of course, that dialed in-depth understanding of your customer segment. It's having product market fit. You sell something that will resonate and actually renew and retain your partners. You've got that going. Then the question is, what unique pieces of content can I use to speak to this offering in a way that no one else is? And it's probably not an ebook or a blog or a newsletter or something to that effect. It has to be, there's no one who whispered into the ears of our partners, let's run competitor research, right, for our prospects' interested companies, their competitors, or let's scrape all the job boards and the ones that are remote, hiring remote talent, let's put them on our blog, or rather on our platform, and then message the people who are trying to recruit and source this talent that we have 78 people waiting for them. I think that this comes with time. It comes with surrounding yourself with the right people who have been doing this for years and have that. I think it's this uncanny valley, guys. It's an uncanny valley where if it's lost in the uncanny valley, it's not going to work out. But you don't know what will get lost in the uncanny valley unless you see it. It's one of those where you have to have just the years of experience and requisite awareness and mindfulness to know what looks normal, what looks serendipitous and like super value add, and what would look completely unrelated. Maybe really cool and valuable, but unrelated to the work we do. So it's asking yourself that question and moving along. I mean, as an example, we'll run people through, 10, 12 ideas that we've had, things that have worked for us as an example. But then, at some point to find that sweet spot, it'll probably look different from what we're doing or from what our other partners are doing or from what anyone else is trying to do too. And that takes, you can't bullshit that exercise really. That takes real exertion, mental exertion and bandwidth to think about. And, it's the kind of thing that comes to you, I don't know, while you're sleeping or showering or at Burning Man or something. It's these campaigns need to be super creative. And you need that mindfulness and awareness of what makes sense, what won't get lost in the uncanny valley, and still resonate. It's interesting because you say it has to be super creative. And I think the problem is when people write emails or they think about what I should be talking about and they ask questions, the problem is they're thinking about what words should I say on this page? Not, hey, what should I actually be trying to convey in this message that actually needs to respond back to me? So they're thinking about the wrong thing. Exactly. Yeah. So, I will admit, I'm an ESL kid. English is my second language. Honestly, sometimes I have a stutter. So I kind of come to things from this perspective of being an alien and like, why do these things work? Why do people say these things in a certain way? Romanian was my first language. It's not even English. So I've always been wired to ask questions. Romanian, yeah. Nice. Da rather. Un pic de românește știu. Știu un pic de românește. And like that wired me from the beginning to wonder why things worked, what clicked and why did it click? Like, is it repeatable? Are there things to learn from that? Is there a framework or an underlying structure or process that I can use to inform that success when I try to make it happen? And yeah, in this one, it's a really nebulous answer of you have to speak to this prospect in a way no one else is, make it valuable, but make it what still is professional, right? Arguably professional, and you know, speaks implicitly to the value that you can bring, right? And yeah, I'd say that, you know, being Romanian, or rather being someone who started sales from this perspective of, oh shit, I have to say the right thing in exactly the right way. I'll tell you that, you know, I would spend a lot of time window dressing, massaging sentences in an email, or, you know, sound bites in a phone call, word tracks. But then I realized at some point, if the ideas underlying the shit you're talking about are really good and have a lot of merit on their own, whether or not you're the most polished or seasoned person speaking to those ideas, it will land anyways. I'll look at my email sometimes and see that, you know, I'm just going through the motions, accidentally have a typo or I missed a pronoun, if, as an example, in an email, which, you know, traditionally, right, is a big problem or a mistake. But when I'm baking into that message or that touch point, that conversation, something that's altogether novel and substantially different, right? That global maximum change, from what everyone else is doing. It doesn't matter as much that I missed the pronoun or wasn't the most polished, suave person on the planet. It mattered that I thought of the content in the first place and that I just spoke to it. Yeah,
it kind of goes back to the, it doesn't matter what you say, it's how you say it. It's why you get results just from standing up at your desk when you're talking. Like, just have some passion behind what you're talking about and people believe it. So
exactly. And yeah, just make sure that the thing is, it makes sense that you're bringing it up first, and that, you know, hopefully the thing you're bringing up is also different from, you know, the emails they opened, the 5 other emails they opened in the last hour, right?
That's cool. And I think from my personal perspective, I hate the idea of spending time trying to figure out what words need to go where and what things need to be in the email. I just want to know what works. And I have a feeling that there's a lot of salespeople out there that just say, I want to know what's best, and I want the sale. Like,
right.
If I could just spend all of my time selling instead of trying to send emails and book appointments, perfect. That's great. You know, I just want to kill the hunt. Right. So I see a lot of value in what Convertist is doing, and I also see some relevancy for companies who just say, hey, you know, we don't want to spend the time to do this. You do this much better because you do it all day long. So super glad that you were able to come on, Chris. We are going to transition into a new segment that we didn't have when you first came on the show. It's called Rapid Fire.
Yeah,
I didn't prep you for this, but you should know this quite well.
Right.
So we ask our guests 3 questions that give our listeners some insight into how someone ticks and what inspires them. So we reserve this specifically for our YouTube channel. So if you're listening to the audio version of this, go hop over to YouTube, hit subscribe, and fast forward to the end of the interview so you can get insight into the crazy, smart, wild brain of Chris Marin. So Chris, first question for you, and this is one I've actually been thinking about some new questions here, so I'm interested to try them out on you.
Yeah, go for it.
Positive or negative, how have your parents influenced who you are today?
Yeah, positive, very positive. They both came here illegally from communist Romania in the 80s. You know, circling back to the 80s theme of this new season. I think we need like some synth music to play in the background or something. That's my style anyways. What they ended up doing is they reminded me, hey, we faked our passports. We faked our passports to escape Romania because it sucked. My dad's an engineer, mom's a nurse, and like they weren't having fun. They weren't. Apparently communism isn't that much fun. They risked their livelihoods and their freedom to basically forge their passports and come over to the States And really, they never missed an opportunity to remind me about it while growing up, right? We had you. Do you know what lengths we went through to have you? So doing that, you know, they essentially instilled this, you know, educated, calculated risk-taking in me, to look for what's out there and just fucking go for it. But go for it in a way that you know, you're mindful and aware about it, and you know, you're hungry about it too. You know, you really need to actually want the thing to get it. You know, if my parents were complacent, or rather, if they were just okay with Romania and they're all right with it, it never would have happened. So the thing is, identify the things you want and go for it in a way that no one else is, and that will stand on its own. And you know, yeah, they instilled that in me.
I love it.
They did not understate it along the way.
That's super cool. And actually, I didn't know that. And before this interview, I didn't know that you came from Romania. I ironically spent quite a bit of time in Romania, which we can talk about another time.
Nice.
So, second question for you, Chris, is, you know, every salesperson, every leader, every business owner deals with stress. What are some ways? What's one way that you manage and cope with that level of stress?
Yeah, it is a real thing. I think not just business owners, but for operators, you know, the half-lives for a lot of C-level people, it's just a few years. People burn out. Happens a lot. And it's important not to, because when you go through wartime, you can't be burned out when that happens. For any operator anywhere, you will have to go through wartime a few times in a given year. And if you're coming out of just being, you know, compounded nights of sleep deprivation, and something totally blindsides you, and you never expect it. That's one rule to these wars: is you never expect it, and they, you know, it blindsides you every time. And you know, you want to be on your game, and by that I mean well rested. You want to not feel easily irritable, and you know, all the things that happen to us when we start to you know, just overwork ourselves, or at least not blend in downtime. So my answer to you is, you know, have that downtime. Any good executive is going to have good downtime. You know, rock climb 3 times a week, as an example. I'll read, and not HBR. I do read HBR, but I'll also read, you know, just like something totally far removed from that. Like yesterday, I spent a half hour. The only like time I didn't spend working, sending emails or anything yesterday, or eating, was just watching the CNN documentary about the extinction, the impending extinction of elephants, of I can't even recall anything else. The elephants stuck out. That one stuck out. But the impending extinction of all these different animals, birds, right? And I was relaxing so much watching this. I couldn't even believe it. It was funny. That hit me at that point. Was wow. It's so funny how watching something so tragic is actually helping me relax, because it's so far removed from how to devise a good email, how to knock a call out of the park, how to, you know, double your ACV and close it. It was, so I protect that hour of downtime every day, Sean, like it's nothing else. Because if I'm going toe to toe and batting against other operators who are selling this thing, the best ones are doing the same thing. They're on their game. They get it. They've got their wits together. And if I'm going to compete against them, I need to, you know, I need to have that hour of downtime every day and protect it, so that I can, you know, bring my best self to every conversation I'm in.
I love it. That's great. Last question, Chris. You're given a 30-second Super Bowl ad. What do you say?
Nice. So I'd say, you know, 9 out of 10 of the companies that fail, it's not product, it's the distribution, it's the sales and marketing, it's the revenue engine. You need to devise a revenue engine that's consistent, it's scalable, that will take you to whatever ambition you have, 10 million, 20 million, 200 million ARR, especially. You need that. You need to architect a good sales engine and actually have it parsed out from each stage, so you can look at where the bottlenecks are and optimize those and fix them. And in order to make that happen, you just need to work with someone who's done it over and over and over again for other people in your industry. They know what the messaging is. They know what, you know, prospects value, And you don't have to start from scratch with the 6 to 12 to 18-month learning curve.
Love it. Love it. It's awesome. Chris, super glad you were able to come on and share some insight and some knowledge from someone who does biz dev and SDRs and all of that. Really super glad that you're able to come on, and looking forward to our listeners continuing to be introduced to all of the value that you provide over the next 10 weeks. So appreciate you coming on. Yeah,
it's been wonderful. I guess, the last time it was about sales development. That's mostly where I stayed. Now I'm like routinely more on the closing side and management. Now that I'm starting to build out the team out here. And I wonder what the scope of the next call will have to be. Maybe customer success, something else thrown in. I'm not sure, but it's the full stack revenue funnel is sales, marketing. It's all becoming the same thing. Yeah. Marketing is looking like sales. Sales is looking like marketing. Customer success is looking like sales. It's becoming a nebulous, tough to solve thing, but it's definitely worth solving.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. We could probably continue on for a whole nother hour or two on this. It's so good. So, Real Sales Talk family, we appreciate you. We're glad that you're tuning in and glad that you're reaching out to us too to let us know that you're tuning in. So continue to hit us up on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. We are there and would love to hear from you. And with that said, we'll see everyone on the next episode.